Welcome to At Home with Music. I'm Leon Olguin. Chances are, if you're close to my age, you remember hearing this type of music in shopping malls, grocery stores, doctor's offices, and elevators. How does this music make you feel? What type of mood does it evoke in you? What mental pictures come to mind? I remember the malls we used to hang out in as teenagers in the early 1970s. I remember one mall in particular. It was called the Fox Hills Mall. And it almost looked like something out of a futuristic science fiction film. I remember it had 3 levels with walkways going across from one level to another, suspended over the lowest level. It was an amazing place, very futuristic, but it had this music playing all the time. I remember that there were radio stations that played this type of music 24 hours a day. They called it beautiful music. I remember a close friend of my father from his working days in the can factory, and this friend's wife absolutely loved this type of music, and she played it in her house all the time. One of my first jobs was working as a busboy at a fancy restaurant on the Queen Mary, that famous ocean liner, which at the time, and probably still is, this was in the early 70s, the Queen Mary was permanently docked in Long Beach, and I was working there as a busboy, and they had this type of music piped in. And so as a result, I was hearing this music 8 hours a day. Now, unlike many of my contemporaries who thought this music was incredibly cheesy, I was fascinated by it. I would think to myself, where did this music come from? Who plays on this music? Where was it recorded? Now, of course, when I listen to it today, it brings back a lot of memories. Now, the music that you're hearing now, I found this on YouTube, of course, and it's very interesting to read the comments. Now, here are some of the comments that were left on this particular video of Mall Muzak from the early 1970s. Somebody wrote, "I smell popcorn, 70s mall pizza, Orange Julius. I see quadratic light fixtures, burnt orange walls, slate pools with Art Deco figurines, trickling water streams flowing down the rocks and lazily spilling over mounds of pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters. Enchanted memories, beautiful ghosts of recollections conjured by this music." Someone else wrote, "Makes me want to buy a pair of dungarees, a pet rock, a lava lamp, and a Kiss poster, an Olivia Newton-John record, play a game of pinball, see Jaws at the theater, eat at Burger King, and sit in the pagoda, stop at Hickory Farms for a beef stick, drink an Orange Julius, and ask Mom if I can stay just one more hour." Another commenter wrote, "Best shopping music by a long shot. Malls and supermarkets should play this instead of the pop music crap." Another commenter wrote, "This music has the obvious effect of calming both customers and staff. Perhaps they should bring it back." Someone else wrote, "My mother loved to shop. This music reminds me of her. Reminds me of a simpler, innocent time. I don't know if it's the sound of capitalism or not. It just reminds me of good old memories. This music feels like the warmest hug by the loveliest grandma ever." Still another commenter wrote, and this video got a lot of comments, by the way. This person wrote, "Amazing how this was just cheesy background music back in the day, but listening to it now in 2023, the nostalgia is overwhelming. What memories." And then this was very interesting. Someone wrote, "Love the music, and I was born in 1974. Now, maybe you remember the name Muzak. It was also referred to as beautiful music, and today some people call it mood music. It's basically this easy listening music that you used to hear in elevators, shopping malls, doctors' offices, or if you were listening to music on hold in the old days when we had music on hold. Well, we don't hear it so much these days, this type of music, but when those of us of a certain age, we hear this music, it brings back a flood of memories and mental images. And as that one YouTube commenter put it, an almost unbearable sense of nostalgia. And interestingly, there seem to be quite a few young people who did not grow up hearing this music piped into all those various places where they found themselves, but they found themselves strangely drawn to this music. And you can find several channels on YouTube devoted entirely to playing this easy listening background music. You can hear background music from airlines and doctors' offices. Anyway, where does this term Muzak come from? Where does the actual music originate? And why don't we hear this music as much as we used to? Now, the term Muzak is usually used to refer to this type of background music, but it was actually the name of the company that produced this music in the first place. And so when people think of Muzak, they think of this bland, soft, gentle, calming music. But the founder of the Muzak company, he was actually an Army general, Major General George O. Squire. Now, General Squire served as the Army's chief signal officer during World War I, and in the early 1920s, he perfected a method for transmitting music across electrical wires. Now, at the time, radio was just getting started. Not many people knew much about it, and so the notion of sending businesses and residences music via wires, well, that was very appealing to General Squire. And so in 1934, he formally founded a company to develop his invention. Now, he liked the sound of the name Kodak, and so he borrowed it and named his company Muzak. Now, unfortunately, by the time his technology of transmitting music across electrical wires was ready for a full-scale implementation, well, by this time radio had found its footing and was becoming ubiquitous in many homes. But this didn't deter Squire. So his company went after a different market. They would supply background music for stores, restaurants, office buildings, and so on. But now they had another obstacle to overcome. In those early days, Muzak didn't have access to a huge library of licensed music like radio stations had. They could pick from that library and play music, but Muzak couldn't do that. So what they did was they brought in top bands and orchestras to record original selections and standards that could be piped into businesses. This strategy resulted in Muzak eventually having this huge archive of music. Nice background music. Now, this early background music, they did fairly well with it, but the company really started to take off in the 1940s. And it's interesting how this happened because in World War II, of course, World War II required more and more industrial production. And company researchers for Muzak made what they thought was a surprising discovery. Their music, this Muzak, could apparently make workers happier and more productive. And so the company created and patented a system called stimulus progression. This system offered 15-minute blocks of this instrumental background music, and they believed that it provided listeners with a subconscious sense of forward movement. They believed that when the workers listened to these blocks of instrumental music, they got more work done. In retrospect, maybe this stimulus progression system really didn't work as effectively as they thought, but at the time, it helped the Muzak company sell subscriptions to businesses. Even the White House was wired for Muzak in 1953 during Dwight Eisenhower's administration. Can you imagine visiting the White House in 1953 and hearing background music, hearing Muzak? Well, by this time, of course, millions of people every day were hearing this music, this Muzak as it came to be known, whether they wanted to or not. Now, Muzak still around today. You don't hear it very much, but it's still around, and it's now known as Mood or Mood Media. That's the name of the company. The history of the Muzak company and what it became, it's long and it's involved and probably beyond the scope of this video. Now, I'm more concerned with people's reaction to this music, this mood-altering, calming music. Its popularity has waned, and so the Muzak company, or the Mood company, has shifted its focus. It still offers this classic background music to the few customers who want it, but most of its programming these days comes from its library of millions of commercially recorded songs. That's why when you go into the supermarket today, you hear pop music, you hear recognizable recordings. And the company has people known as audio architects. They design special programs of music to fit specific clients' needs. So maybe they want to help workers be more productive, or they want to induce shoppers to spend more time in the store and consequently spend more money. Another important thing that the company does, in addition to tailoring programs of music for a business's specific needs, it also deals with the issue of paying licensing fees on the songs that a business plays. You see, if you have a shop or a restaurant and you just plug in an iPod and let the music go, you need to pay licensing fees to the copyright holders for every song that is played. Now, some businesses will do that, but Muzak, or Mood's, current services include all the necessary performance royalties. So they take care of all of that for the business, and the business just buys a subscription, plays the music, and that, of course, is a selling point for the company. Interesting question, by the way. Why is this called elevator music in the first place? Well, I found this answer online. We need to go back to the early 20th century, as skyscrapers began popping up in urban areas around the world. The necessity of elevators shot up. As the story goes, early skyscraper denizens, that the people that worked or lived in the skyscraper, they weren't totally sold on this idea of getting into a tiny box and being pulled up a very tall shaft. To help calm riders' nerves about getting into elevators, building owners would pipe in soothingly bland music. And soon, elevator music became shorthand for any boring, non-threatening instrumental music. Now, actually, I don't really find this music boring, although it certainly is non-threatening. Now, obviously, I can't listen to music while I'm working on music, but occasionally I just enjoy putting it on in the background while I'm writing or editing, and I do actually find it rather calming, rather soothing. And maybe you do too. I know it certainly brings back a lot of memories and sometimes that overwhelming sense of nostalgia. Let me know, what do you think about this music? What feelings does it evoke in you? What memories does it bring back? What mental pictures does it conjure up in your mind? Maybe you're too young to remember hearing this music all over the place wherever you were going. What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments section. Thanks for watching as we went on this trip down memory lane today. And I look forward to speaking to you in the next one. Oh, by the way, if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please do so. That helps the channel a lot. For those of you who have subscribed, thank you very much. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you again, and I'll talk to you again soon.